Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Nigel here again. Hi, how you doing? A few changes have gone on since my last video, which was quite a while ago, I know. First thing you'll notice here we can see a big blue shiny thing. That's my Mustang in grabber blue, and yeah, I like to keep it in the garage. It doesn't get driven in the wet. It doesn't get driven on salty roads. It's going to be 3 years old in June, and it's done 900 miles. So yeah, it gets a bit mollycoddled, to be quite honest with you. But it lives in the garage here, my workshop, and I don't like leaving it out. I don't mind leaving it out in the rain, doesn't matter. I don't like leaving it out when it's windy, because you can guarantee the law of sod dictates if a bin blows over or a lid blows off or something, that's what it'll hit. It won't hit the gates, it won't hit the fence or the wall. No, it'll hit that. You can guarantee it. So that stays out there. So this video today is all about what I've been doing and how we're getting on and everything. The engine block is all painted now. I'm getting ready to hone it. I've got all my parts and gaskets and stuff. We'll talk more about that in this video. And I'm also looking at this. This is the great big casting that goes on the front of your engine. This is where all your pulleys go and your belt goes and everything. This is the main pulley in the centre here with the viscous fan on it. And as you can see, Ford don't paint it, thanks. So it just rusts. There's the back of it there. And you can buy this as a complete assembly because you can't buy that bearing. Okay, now I've checked out the number and I can't actually find that bearing to buy. But if you actually look here, you can see how it's been staked in. No circlips, no, it's staked in. So you'd have to grind that staking away and then stake it again, even if you could find a bearing. But I will tell you how I get this apart, because if you want to do the same as me and paint it, obviously with the pulley over the front, then you can't get in behind to paint it, so it'll all be rusty again in no time. So that was my challenge, and that's what the first part of this video is going to be all about. So as we can see here, my bench is a bit of a mess. We've got paint thinners and everything here. Obviously, before we do any engine building work, this is all going to have to be spotless. So yeah, you can see I use cardboard and stuff. So yeah, before we do any engine work, this is going to have to be absolutely spotless. I will show you the block in a minute. It's all painted and looking lovely. But more about this cover. Okay, so how does it come apart? Well, basically it's an assembly that's pressed together, and it's designed not to come apart, just like everything is these days. So basically you've got a spindle here which goes through that bearing, okay, and then that in turn goes through this pulley. It's pressed on, and then you've got the thread on the front here which actually gives you the that's where the viscous fan goes on. So first problem is in the back of here, if you can see it, try and get this close up, where you've got this staking, you've got like a recess turned in there. It's almost like a very, very shallow circlip groove. And in there is a piece of tin. Okay, so in there is a piece of tin, and it's kind of got a hump in the middle to go around the back of this pinion here, where it sticks out the back of the bearing. So obviously when you can't get it out, you can't pull it out, you have to sort of push it out. And when you push it out, it just distorts it and destroys it. So down the centre of here, there is a hole, you can see, okay, so it's a through hole. So what you can do is just bang through there and just knock that tin plate out of the back. Then what you can do is put this on something of the correct diameter, or just put a block across here, and you can press the shaft out through. Now what I did, I was trying to see if there was some other way of doing it. So if you just want to take the pulley off and not disturb anything on the back, what you can do is, like I did, when this is on here, there's a couple of places you can slip an M10 nut under there, a 17mm M10 nut, and then put an M10 bolt down through the top and find the nut and just screw it down in, and keep screwing it down in until the nut rises up the bolt and goes into the back of the pulley, as you can see there. I'll tell you what, I'll show you here. Let's get a nut and a bolt. Okay, so what we're doing is we're putting the bolt through the hole. With the end tab nut is sat underneath, and then we're just going to wind this, and what happens is the M10 nut is locked onto the side of the pulley. So when you do the when you do the bolt up, as you can see, as long as you keep pulling up, it's locked. Okay, you need good clean threads. I haven't got good clean threads, but and then what will happen is the bolt will wind down and it will push this pulley up enough so you can get a puller on there to pull it off, and there you go, that's job done. And then you've got the pulley off and you're able to get in there and clean that up and paint it or whatever, or if you want to replace the bearing. Then if you want to push this out, just get rid of that cover on the back, get this up on your press and press that out. Okay, that's what I've done. Don't need to, I was sort of investigating to see how this was all put together, so that's that bit done. And I need to wire brush all this off before I can paint it, so it's too cold to do any painting tonight. I think I may be past the dew point. So I've made up these little plastic discs. This is 40mm and 60mm diameter, and I'm just going to literally pop that one in there, so that one sits in there, and then I can pop this one in here, like so, and that'll protect that bearing from any dirt or anything, or I can spray it and not get any paint on the bearing, and that's all nice and clean. So now I can just go over it with a wire brush, like so, and get the rust off. And there we go, my battery's just gone flat, so there it ends. So I'll get this all wire brushed off now, and then we'll get it go to getting it painted. Okay, so here's the engine block, and we can see there's a little dog. Jess, what are you doing? What are you doing sitting there? She absolutely loves being in the garage, and she seems to love engines and stuff, as you've seen in some photographs I put up. So anyway, here is the engine block, and it's painted in a very becoming light grey colour, as you can see. And if you remember from the photos I showed you before, it was very rusty. Why have I done it light grey? Reason being, I also have a Ford GPW, and one of Ford's first 4x4s was the GPW, which is a direct copy of the Willis. Get down, Jess. And basically I thought I'd do it the same colour as that engine, so that is a light grey colour. So the engine's now sealed in, there'll be no more rusting, and basically it's going to show up any oil leaks or anything, unfortunately, I guess. So yeah, looking lovely. Obviously I haven't painted inside the front here, and I haven't painted in around the back of the bell housing either. There's a little area here which was a little trap for any water or anything. So you can see all done. I'll go around now, scrape all the paint off all these metal surfaces there. And as I said, I've got all the new gaskets to go on. So I just want to get it honed. You can't see in here because the light's not that good. Maybe you can see. We've got this sort of edge on the top here. There's no edge from the piston rings or anything, but it's just a sort of darkened area really from the combustion process and the bloody EGR and stuff, I guess. But I've given the top a quick stone off, and then I'm going to wash out all the oilways and everything, give it a good blowout with an airline, and then we're ready to start building it. And I'll show you how I do my bearing clearances and everything. If anybody knows what the bearing clearances should be on this engine, I'd be grateful. I can't seem to find anything. I found a Ford Transit manual online, but when I go on to the when I try to look at it, it's actually got adverts down both sides, so you can't actually see what's on the page, which is absolutely useless. So there we go, that's the engine block. Right, we've come indoors now, and this is actually a day or so later. Looking at the sump now, the sump on the TDCi for the Land Rover is slightly different than it is on the Transit van. Now I believe it's just this here. There's this knockout here to clear the diff on the front diff on full bump. on the front end. So looking at this sump, I've given it a clean in the paraffin tank, and I've just washed it out with some brake cleaner, and obviously before I put it back on, it'll get a final proper wash. And as you can see, all the silicone's gone from around the edge. This, you get some silicone remover, spray it on, just leave it, and then with a brass wire brush you could just take it all off. And there's a little bit still left on there which I need to get off, but basically you can see on the whole it's all gone. If you look in the pathetic Land Rover manual for this, it tells you that the front cover and the sump should be discarded. The only reason I can think that is because with the astronomical labour charges these days in garages, it's probably cheaper to replace the sump than to pay a guy the time it takes him to clean off all the silicone. I think the sumps are around £50 retail. So yeah, it's probably cheaper to actually just replace the sump with a new one rather than pay someone to clean it all up, because that probably took me, I don't know, an hour, I guess, maybe 3/4 of an hour. And at today's labour rates, which I don't know what they are, I know they're over £100, aren't they, an hour, it's cheaper to replace it. So I've carefully removed it. I used a paint scraper, like a putty knife, and just literally went round and just literally got it underneath. Don't start pulling it and trying to lever it off. Just make sure you've got the putty knife in all the way around and lift it off. Don't get screwdrivers in there and start levering it. A couple of things I've found. Obviously we've got rust. Now I don't know if the camera is going to focus on this because it's so black and the light's reflective, but you can see here where I've scratched it with a knife, it kind of looks like the metal's fractured almost, but it's not. So what I'm going to do on the other side of this area, it's rusty where it's stamped, so I'm going to sandblast it. The reason being is when you look all over this thing, you can see, when you see stuff like this here, where you've got the trail, the snake trail or the slug trail, that means there's rust there and it's creeping under the paint. So simply rubbing this down is not going to be good enough. You can see it started here, so you can see there it started, and I can rub that down. If I take this sanding stick I use for modelling, if I rub that down, you can see that I can rub the paint away and then I could paint it, but those rusty snail trails are still there. So the reason this is, here's a perfect example. If you look here, you can see just here, see that imperfection in the paint? That is literally a bubble. Okay, and you can see that the paint, the rust has started in there. Every part of this engine has got this, these bubbles under the paint, and then you just rub the bubble away and there's nothing there. There's no rust or anything. There's another one there. You see, I mean, I've got no bloody fingernails. I bite them, which is a sin. You can see there, rub that away, and it's imperfections, it's dirt in the paint or on the metal before it's painted, and every piece of black metal on this engine is like it. So and then that leads to stuff like your rust. You've got it all over here. So you can see I'm going to sandblast it, but I sandblast this rather than replace it. If it was a casting, I wouldn't sandblast it, because you can never get all the sand out. Well, you can, but I don't trust myself. The only issue I've got with this one is down in the bottom here, you can see there's a pressed steel part riveted in, or spot welded in should I say, that's going to trap sand. So I've given it a really good blast out with an airline, really good clean out with brake cleaner to make sure it's all dry. And what I'm going to do now is get a piece of blue tack here and run that around and seal it in. So let me get that done and I'll come back and show you. And there we go, look, that's all done now. So if I can get that close to the camera and show you. And I'm not going to be actually sandblasting the inside obviously, but I'm probably going to run around here, just around this edge. So obviously I won't be directing sand directly at that, but it gets everywhere, so you need to be really, really careful. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was a young lad, I worked at Rolls-Royce. I did my apprenticeship at Rolls-Royce, and I was rebuilding an engine, and I decided that it would be a really good idea to sandblast and glass ball peen all the aluminium castings. And one of those parts was an oil filter housing, and I hadn't realised there was a blind hole in there that was full of oil sludge. All the sand got in the oil sludge, went around the engine, and I knocked 40 thou, 1mm off of one side of number one big end in, I think it was about 10 miles. So yeah, you need to be really careful. Ever since that day, I've been really careful with sandblasting things. If you've had heads sandblasted or anything, you need to make sure they are absolutely spotless before you put them back in the car. You never know, you know, like with crankshafts, when they drill them, they drill across the webs and then they plug them in the end. You know, down in the bottom of there will be sludge that no degreaser is going to really get out. You need to take the plugs out and really brush them through, just to really be sure, you know, especially if it's an older engine like this, which is only being rebuilt because of leaks. I'm not going to worry about it because it had no contamination, everything was nice and clean. So I'm not going to worry about it on this, but I'm certainly not going to be introducing sand. Right, here we are then. This is now a couple of days later again, and there's the sump all sandblasted and ready for paint. The blue tack on the inside worked around the oilway, so there's no sand got into that at all. Basically, what's interesting about this, if you've got one of these, if you can see these areas here, these dark patches, they are actually areas of corrosion. If I can get up close and get it to focus, I don't think it is going to want to focus, but you can see the areas of corrosion. They were under the paint, so worth doing. You can see when there's this typical one there, look. So yeah, really worth doing, because that corrosion under the paint will rust inwards. And I've actually had this happen to me on a Rover SD1, a Rover V8. I had the sump rust through from the outside in, and yeah, it made a hell of a mess. I had an oil leak, I couldn't suss it where it was, and it was actually coming through the sump. So yeah, it does happen. And here's the front cover, which I blasted. Now the only area that was seriously bad was down in here, and you can see again we've got some pitty and corrosion. But when we look all over it, we can see areas. This is just where it's not been fully blasted and the paint's, there's still, you know, a very slight remnant of paint, but there were areas where the paint was just flaking off, that it hadn't bonded to the steel at all. So I've basically gone around and painted the insides of the flanges on these parts, and now I'm going to basically go around and paint the outside of them, again with the Corollas S primer, which you can get from Arkwright. This stuff is brilliant. If you look at the finish you get with it, it's a really nice finish, which if you can coat it within 9 days with the Corollas RF16, the gloss black glass infused paint, which I use. It's too cold for me to do that now. It's damp, it's about 90% humidity, and it's about 7 degrees, so I'm not going to be doing any gloss work until we get, you know, deeper, higher temperatures and less humidity. In case you don't know, with gloss paint, cold temperatures and high levels of humidity cause it to what's called bloom, and it loses the shine, and it can get like a sort of white tinge to it almost. It's the worst colour to spray in the cold is red, because the bloom in that looks bloody awful. So yeah, if you want to get a nice high gloss good finish, you need it to be dry and at least sort of, you know, 12-15 degrees really. So there we go. So over on the bench, I've got my Corollas S paint. Now actually, this is another good thing about this paint. I mixed this yesterday. I put it in the pot, put this piece of aluminium on the top, and there we go. It's still there ready to spray. So I'll give that a quick stir, chuck it in the gun, and away we go. And also another little tip, I've used the Corollas thinners, okay, which is which apparently is just xylene. Store it in a jar like so. Obviously wash the jar out in the dishwasher first. Store it in a jar, and then you can use that as a gun wash and a thinner for this paint. So you don't keep wasting thinners washing your gun, but then also you can reuse this as a thinner for your paint because it's already got the red in it. Obviously you can't use it for the black, but if you're doing a lot of black, you could do the same with the black. Keep the black in a separate jar, use it as a thinner, use it as a gun wash. And yeah, there's my little gun there. And if you remember when I did the video last time on this Corollas S, I used the electric HVLP system, which is up there on the shelf. You can see it there. But it was too kind of pebble dashy. It wasn't a very good finish, so I've decided to stick with air. So I'm using this little small spot gun. It's just got a round nozzle on it. It doesn't actually have a fan at all, which is great for these smaller parts. And I'm spraying it around 35 psi. and as you can see, the mix here is the paint with about 10-15% thinners in it, so it's not particularly thin, but it does go down and then it settles lovely. One of the advantages of it being colder, it takes a long time to dry, so it's got longer to settle out. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get my stuff set up, and then I'm going to do a video and probably do it at high speed and show you me spraying these parts, and then I think we'll call it a day and we'll get this video up for you to see. So I'll see you in a second. And there we go, you can see now, very wet, pretty heavy coat. Want to make sure they get plenty on there because of all the corrosion, and also this stuff does pull down beautifully, it really does pull down nice. So there we go, so that's the first coat. Now I'm going to leave that for, it says 4 hours at 10 degrees, so I'm going to leave this for about 6 hours, so I'll be spraying it again this evening. But I think we'll call it a day for this video there. And just want to say thank you for watching, really, and thank you for everybody who's subscribed so far. Tell your friends, there's some new and exciting stuff coming. The engine build, I'll be showing you all that with the bearings and all the new bits and pieces. Also talk to you about some of the suppliers I've used, and I've done a lot of research and found prices vary ridiculously. And there's Jess, she's come to have a look. And yes, I do realise I have done this without wearing a mask, but if I just show you here, if we look out the garage, you can see the garage doors open, so not really too bad. I should have worn a mask, I can just about taste the paint, to be honest. But 35 psi, little spot gun, there's hardly any overspray, as you can see. I mean, even here you can see there's no overspray on the table there at all. So as I say, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.